Hello, guys. Welcome to another exciting episode of Control or Be Controlled, a podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And I remain your host, Darlington. Today's guest is Dom Morley, Grammy-winning producer, mix engineer, educator, and author with 3 decades of experience shaping some of the most influential music of our time. Dom learned his craft at London's legendary Metropolis Studios, working alongside iconic producers including Tony Visconti, Phil Spector, and Mark Ronson. He went on to engineer Amy Winehouse Back to Black, earning a Grammy Award for the Record of the Year, and has collaborated with artists across an extraordinary range of genres, including Adele, Sting, Underworld, and Beck. Dom, welcome to Control or Be Controlled.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
All right, Dom. You have worked at the highest levels of the music industry and earned a Grammy for one of the most celebrated albums of the century, right?
Yes.
Can you share those experiences with us? How did they shape your belief that creativity is a skill and not just a natural gift?
It all comes down to I first started thinking about this when I sort of have a problem with the word talented because there's Einstein is supposed to have said that something like success or talent is 99% perspiration and only 1% inspiration. And I think that's so true because so often people who are very good at what they do, and you see it particularly in music or the arts, within entertainment, and people say, oh, they're so talented. And yeah, there's probably like a tiny bit of them that had a natural kind of inclination to playing a guitar or singing or something like that. But so much of the reason why they are where they are is because they worked so hard at it. The people that I was used to working with that did particularly well also worked incredibly hard. And even to the extent where I worked with, I won't name them, but I worked with a couple of pop bands back in the early 2000s where there was one member who was clearly working a lot harder than the others. They were much more interested in the process and getting everything as perfect as it could be. And those were the ones that when the pop band split up, went on and had a solo career. Now, a lot of people would have said they were the most talented ones, but I don't think that was the case. I think they're all reasonably talented people, but there was one person in each band who worked harder than everyone else. So that's kind of my problem with the word talent is often just means practice, but you didn't see it happening. So I think creativity is a very similar thing in that I've worked with a lot of people who are, very creative, and you can see that while they're working. But once I've studied this for a few years. I've read a lot of stuff about it, and been sort of. I'm not a neuroscientist or a psychologist, but I've read a lot of like quite heavy academic papers about creativity and why it's sort of proven methods that are proven to make you more creative. And all these people that I work with, I look back and I think they all knew this instinctively. There were things that they were doing that were just direct processes that make you more creative. And I'm sure nobody taught them. They just found out that they ended up writing better songs if they had certain habits. So that's why I've sort of come to the conclusion that creativity is much like talent, in that there's almost nothing in it that's innate and inherited. And it's almost all about how much effort you put into that particular thing. Now, you've obviously got to know how to do that. If you are learning guitar, you can take guitar lessons and you can get better at guitar if you do what your teacher tells you and all that sort of stuff. Whereas creativity is a bit more different in that it's not so obvious how to be more creative. Most people aren't aware that's even possible, which is why I've written a book which basically lays it out for everybody. These are the various different ways that you are able to be more creative, and you can sort of pick whichever method works for you, or methods maybe.
All right, thank you so much, Dom. So, moving on, many people are told to specialize and pick a lane, but your career has moved across genres from pop and rock to electronic and orchestral music. How has being a creative generalist helped you develop your craft?
Well, I think for me, it really helps to help you generate more interesting ideas. Because if you are constantly jumping around genres, then you're bringing the normal ideas from one genre into another one where they're kind of groundbreaking and new. So you can quite easily do interesting work across different genres by the fact that you're still moving. And actually, I mean, aside any sort of pretense of having an agenda and a deliberate plan about this, I just find it more interesting. I have a wide range of music that I like, and I find it interesting to work in one thing, and then for the next session I do or the next project I do, it's something completely different. I find, like, if I'm working on, for example, if I'm working on something jazz orchestral, when I'm in the studio, when I'm at home, I'll probably listen to something more electronic or more rock. And if I'm working on something pop, then I'll listen to something orchestral. So I tend to want to have that balance in my head at all the times anyway, where I want to have different things going on. And then I've just found that that's kind of helped the work that I do, in that I think I bring something a bit more interesting than someone who's done the same genre their whole career. There's a benefit to that experience, though. I'm not going to play that down. Somebody that's, for example, only ever worked in orchestral music, they'll have a bit more experience about certain things than I will. So there are benefits to that, and I'm not always going to be the right guy for the project. But if I think I'm more the right guy if you want something a little bit different from the norm, because I've got a wider range of experience that I can bring to it. So it's kind of come down. It wasn't a deliberate plan from the start. It was just what made me more. I found it more interesting. But looking back, I think it's really helped me help my clients to do more interesting things.
All right, Dom. Creativity is often associated with unlimited freedom. Do you agree with that?
I agree that it's associated with that. I agree that's what people think. But actually, I think that isn't the way to be creative, is to have unlimited freedom. I think that's it makes it harder. So a good example is writers will always talk about the problem of having the blank page in front of them. When you've got nothing to work off, you can do anything. You get in a kind of stasis where you can't move because you don't know which direction to turn. So quite often advice to writers is just write a first draft, write anything, don't worry about it. It's never going to survive. It's going to change very, very quickly. But once you've written something down, then you've got a framework from where you can move and start to develop ideas. And also, you know what things you don't want anymore. You know, you've written something down, you don't want that in. So that's made a decision for you. And to take that over into music, when I'm working on tracks with people, quite often when I'm producing stuff, I'll be working with someone who's really just got a chord sequence and a vocal part. So they'll have a vocal melody and lyrics and a chord sequence and not a band around them. It's rare that I do things with a band. It's normally solo artists. So what that means is we can essentially do anything. We could go in any direction, and you'd never start if you could sit there and do literally anything, which these days with modern production techniques, you can. You know, you can call up any instrument you want, a virtual version in your computer, or you can hire somebody online that plays any instrument and they'll play on your song and send the files to you. So you do have all those options, and that's that freedom that you're talking about. But then, as I say, you get nothing done. So what I do is I start out with getting the artist to give me a playlist of songs that they think their music should sit within. And then all of a sudden I've got some sort of boundaries. I know roughly whether they want like drum loops or electronic drums, or if they want a live drummer. So I've got a decision made about that, which is a great start. And I know roughly what instruments they want to use, have a vague idea of that. So then what I do is I then build on that and I restrict myself further. So having got those bunch of restrictions in from the artist playlist, and then I go, right, say I was a band. Say this was a band that was sitting around this particular artist. Let's say there were 4 band members and they've got their instruments. So then there'll be like, say one is a drummer. So we get a drummer in to play the parts. And there's a bass player who also plays keyboard. So sometimes it's a synth bass, sometimes it's a bass guitar. So those are 2 instruments that I've made a decision on. And then there might be a piano and then say an electric guitar or something like that. So I've picked a bunch of instruments, and that's what the core of the sound of that record is going to be. So by restricting my freedoms and bringing myself in to a few boundaries and a few kind of blocks, that means I can move ahead and I can start to work, because then I can start to work on the musical ideas. I can start to work on where the emphasis in the instruments should be, what notes they should be playing, and all those sort of things, which you have to do obviously to make the record. So I have found in my experience, and also I've noticed other people find in theirs when they're doing creative work, that an unlimited amount of options and freedom means you do nothing at all. You're paralyzed by indecision, and a restriction and quickly building yourself some boundaries allows you to make decisions and move forward.
Great. Thank you for that wonderful answer. So, after decades of producing and teaching, what patterns have you noticed among people who consistently produce great creative work?
I suppose one of the main things, which I think one thing that's really worth saying about the difference between I've noticed people that are very successful and less successful is an attitude to failure. The more successful people have failed more and are happy to fail. They treat each idea as a possible avenue to explore. And that can be on a small level, like an idea being a guitar part on a song or a lyrical idea. Or it can be on a larger scale where it's like, we're going to make this album a dance record instead of a pop record or something like that. It could be a career change idea. And successful people can make those decisions. They can try those things out, and then they can fail without taking that as too much of a judgment on themselves. They can shrug that off as, I tried that thing. It was worth a go. I enjoyed it, and it didn't seem to land with the audience. I'll try something else. Yeah. Or just I tried that lyric idea, and then when I sang it to my friend, I realized it sounded terrible. So I'm going to skip that. And some people would be disheartened by that, but the more successful people are not, and they just treat that kind of failure as information. That's feedback, and then they learn, and then they move on. And I think it's a difference of mindset that has to happen before you have any chance of being successful. You only become successful because you were like that. You don't become like that once you are successful. You don't get the confidence of success and then are happy with failure. You have to be happy with failure in order to have the number of goes at something, keep trying at things and stick at things long enough in order to become successful. So you've got to look at it that way around, really. But I've always thought that's quite an interesting thing, is the more successful people are, the less bothered they are when they do things badly or if things don't work. They just pick themselves up and carry on.
All right. Thank you so much, Dom. So, moving on, do you believe creative block is a real obstacle? Or is it often a sign that we need to approach the problem differently?
Yeah, it is. It's interesting because so I used to come across this quite a lot when I was a professor at Leeds Conservatoire. I was the tutor for the master's students, and you would sometimes get them come in, and they had a serious creative block. They couldn't get anything. Well, they said they couldn't write anything. They had to deliver a number of new songs every term, and so there was, particularly as the year got on, there was quite a lot they had to write. So they had to kind of get on with it. Now, what I found really worked to get them out of the creative block was, as you say, it was a different approach to writing, because the creative sort of part of your brain, there's sort of two bits when you're creating something. There's the one that's, I guess one word is ideation. It's the bit where you're coming up with ideas. And then there's another bit where you're judging those ideas and deciding whether they're worth keeping or not. And those two are very much best separated, so that you do a lot of the idea generation all at once with no judgment and no consideration of whether they're good or not. You just get a lot of ideas out. And then at a later point, you come back and you make those kind of edits and that judgment. So when I think, certainly from my experience with my students, and I don't think they're unique, I think the creative block comes when they do both of those processes at the same time, and they're quickly stamping on their creativity with their editing. So there's nothing that they want to keep. They do a little bit, write a little bit, and then judge it, decide they don't like it. And also the other issue with that is the ideation, the idea generation part of your brain does take a little bit of while to warm up. You do need to give it sort of almost like a run up, you need to do it for a while before it starts getting like into its sort of strength. So if you're constantly judging and switching to the other part of your brain, switching to the part of the brain that does the editing, then you're constantly sort of setting your idea generation back to zero. So what used to work with my students is I would set them a task and go, right, for the rest of the week, I used to see them every Monday and say, right, for the rest of the week, first thing you do when you get up in the morning is you spend 2 to 3 hours just writing. You're not allowed to delete anything. Don't even listen back. Just get new ideas out, play them on your piano, put them into your computer, whatever it is, just get new ideas out, and then leave your house, go for a walk, do whatever, have lunch, come back, and in the afternoon, listen to everything that you've done when you've had that few hours gap, and then edit. And it's all right if you throw it all away. That's fine. If you don't like anything, that's fine. Throw it all away. But having that gap between the initial ideas and the editing of them, the judgment of them, allows those different parts of the brain to work at their best. And every single time I set this task for them, they would come back on the following Monday full of energy and excitement because they'd written 3 songs, which is more than they'd done in a month or something. So the writer's block had gone, and they had been really, really effective in their writing and really, really successful. So yeah, it is a real thing, but I think it's more of a process problem than a lot of people realize. And if you adjust your process and the way that you write, I think it's a relatively simple thing to get over it and to get to start getting good stuff done, get some good ideas out.
All right. Thank you so much, Dom. So, personally, for me, I do have creative blocks sometimes when I try
Right.
to create.
Well, now you know how to fix it.
Yeah, definitely. I know how to fix it. So,
Yeah.
AI is rapidly changing music, art, and content creation. From your perspective as both a creator and a technologist, do you think AI is a threat to our creativity or a powerful tool or something even more complicated than this?
Yeah, I think I'm still deciding. It's somewhere in the middle, really. I think it's a powerful tool for productivity. So you can, as an individual, get more things done than you used to be able to by getting AI to do elements of that for you. But in terms of creative process, I've been using AI quite heavily for, I guess, a year maybe on stuff. I don't use it in the studio, and it's because I don't think it's very good at that. The way that those AIs are built, they're called large language models. That's sort of the software of an AI. And its job is from all the data that it's collected, when you give it a prompt, its job is to give you the most obvious answer, right? The most logical next word or move on a chessboard or whatever it is. What's the most sensible next thing? And that's how they sound like a human talking. That's when they write something, it sounds like a person's written it because they know the most logical next word to write in that sentence. Now, if you're doing something creative and you want to do something interesting and new, that's actually the last thing that you want, is to have the most logical next word or next note or next anything, because that's the predictable and the boring and the been done before. And you're here to do something new and interesting and exciting. So I only think it's a threat to creative industries if you're used to making very predictable music that people don't want to be challenged by, I guess. Maybe that's the way. I'm not entirely sure how to word this. I haven't really thought this thoroughly through before, but it's a good question. It's the sort of thing where if you want something predictable, simple, easy background, then AI will get better and better at doing that. But if you want something creative, new, that's going to grab people's attention and that's going to make them think differently about the world, or all the reasons why art exists, really, and why people want to do art, then I don't think AI is going to help you with the creativity part of it. It may help you with productivity. It might write some emails for you, or stuff like that saves you a bit of time. But it's not going to help you come up with brilliant new ideas, because it's not designed to do that. It's designed to give you something predictable. So I don't know. This technology moves very fast and in ways that we can't predict. But that's certainly, from everything that I've seen now and everything that I've used it for, that's where it feels like AI is, which I think is kind of good, because I like being the creative kind of aspect. I like the creative aspect of my work, and the fact that I can do more of that is cool. And I think hopefully other people will feel the same.
All right. So here is my final question for you, Dom.
Yeah.
After everything you have learned from working with world-class artists, what is one principle about creativity that you wish every aspiring creator understood?
I guess the thing that I really would like people to know, and I think some people know it instinctively, but it takes a long time to get to that point, is that it's a tool, and it's almost like a muscle. It's a tool that you can wield when you need it. It's not divinely delivered. It's not something that comes from on high, and it's not something that you sit around and wait for inspiration to strike. Like the people that I've worked with, the successful people, they don't wait for inspiration to strike. They just start work. They go to work. There's a famous quote from Picasso, actually, the painter, which is, I'm going to paraphrase it because I won't get it exactly right, which is, inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. So he would set to work. He would start working. He would start painting. And at some point while he was in his process, a good idea would come about. So I think that's really the thing that I think people should realize. If they want to do something creative, get to work, like start working. And if you can, again, in my book, I've written a load of different, to give you a bit of an idea, there's a chapter on like restrictions, as we've been talking about. There's a chapter on failure, as we've been talking about, chapter on generalism, as we've been talking about. So there's different chapters about how you can push yourself to be more creative. So each individual have different ways, different ones that will work for them. So if you want to be creative and do something interesting, then start working. Don't wait for good ideas to come. Just start working. And then you will find the process for you that makes those good ideas come. And then once you've got that, you can just repeat that. And you'll keep on finding that you're able to have good ideas and interesting ideas much easier than you did before, because it's not something that you are born with. It's not something that some people are born with and some people aren't. Everybody's born with creativity. If you are human and you can think, then you are a creative being. So just get to work and find your process that gives you good ideas. And my book isn't out yet, but hopefully when it is, you'll buy my book and go, oh, these 3 different things I never thought of. I'm going to try those. And one of those will be your new route to even easier creativity.
Thank you so much, Dom. Thank you for sharing your insights on creativity, innovation, and the process behind meaningful work. Your journey shows that creativity isn't just reserved for a selected few. It's something that can be developed through curiosity, experimentation, and practice. For listeners out there who want to learn more about your work, your writing, or follow your insights on music production and creativity, where can they connect with you?
So the best place actually is on Instagram. So I've got a couple of accounts on Instagram, depending on what you're interested in. So if you're interested in the creativity stuff, then Dom Morley Author is the Instagram account to go to. And if you're just interested in the music production, then Dom Morley is the one. So those are the 2 accounts to follow, depending on which you're interested in, or both. If you're interested in both, then follow me on both. But that's where to find me.
All right. Thank you so much, Dom. And thank you to all my listeners for tuning in on this very special episode of Control or Be Controlled with Dom Morley. And you all do have a wonderful day ahead.